Good evening. I'm Steve Jobs from Apple Computer. We're very glad to be here tonight. It is 1958. IBM passes up the chance to buy a young, fledgling company that has just invented a new technology called xerography. 2 years later, Xerox is born, and IBM has been kicking themselves ever since. It is 10 years later, the late 60s. Digital Equipment Corporation and others invent the mini-computer. IBM dismisses the mini-computer as too small to do serious computing and therefore unimportant to their business. DEC grows to become a multi-$100 million corporation before IBM finally enters the mini-computer market. It is now 10 years later, the late 70s. In 1977, Apple, a young, fledgling company on the West Coast, invents the Apple II, the first personal computer as we know it today. IBM dismisses the personal computer as too small to do serious computing and therefore unimportant to their business. The early 1980s, 1981. Apple II has become the world's most popular computer, and Apple has grown to a $300 million corporation, becoming the fastest growing company in American business history. With over 50 competitors vying for a share, IBM enters the personal computer market in November of 1981 with the IBM PC. 1983. Apple and IBM emerge as the industry's strongest competitors, each selling approximately $1 billion worth of personal computers in 1983. Each will invest greater than $50 million for research and development and another $50 million for television advertising alone in 1984. Totaling almost $250 million combined. The shakeout is in full swing. The first major firm goes bankrupt, with others teetering on the brink. Total industry losses for 1983 outshadow even the combined profits of Apple and IBM for personal computers. It is now 1984. It appears IBM wants it all. Apple is perceived to be the only hope to offer IBM a run for its money. Dealers, initially welcoming IBM with open arms, now fear an IBM-dominated and controlled future. They are increasingly turning back to Apple as the only force that can ensure their future freedom. IBM wants it all and is aiming its guns on its last obstacle to industry control, Apple. Will Big Blue dominate the entire computer industry? The entire information age? Was George Orwell right?
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary created for the first time in all history a garden of pure ideology where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests, obeying contradictory thoughts. Unification of thoughts is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
There have only been 2 milestone products in our industry to date. The first was Apple II in 1977. The second was the IBM PC in 1981. Come on. Let's be fair. What we need now is the third industry milestone product, and that's what Macintosh is all about. We've been working on this thing for over 2 years now, and those of us that have been really close to it will all tell you it is insanely great. And you'll have a chance to see a little bit more of it later on tonight. And we're introducing it at a mainstream price point, as most of you know, at $2,495. And what I want to do is run through some of the key milestones and key features of Macintosh very briefly, just in case you haven't heard all about them, and then we'll get into some more interesting stuff here. The first thing is that Macintosh uses Lisa technology. It's got the identical user interface of Lisa with its radical ease of use, its mice, windows, pull-down menus, point, click, cut, and paste. And to accomplish this, we use exactly the same microprocessor as Lisa, a 68,000 running at 8 megahertz, and this thing eats 8088s for breakfast. Macintosh has about 192K bytes of memory. 64K of it is ROM, 128K of it is RAM. And inside the 64K bytes of ROM is contained the entire operating system, the entire graphics, foundation, and subsystem, and the entire user interface. All the windowing stuff, the menu stuff, the mouse stuff, all in ROM. Just like the 5¼ inch disc was a breakthrough in the 70s, we think the 3½ inch disc is a breakthrough in the 80s. And we're storing 400K bytes of formatted information on one side of these floppies, which fit inside your shirt pocket. Macintosh has 2 built-in serial ports. These ports are RS-232 and RS-422. They go up to a megabit per second. And they also support a local interconnect scheme called AppleBus, which allows you to connect up to 32 of these products together at virtually no additional cost. Macintosh has 4-voice sound and speech built in. And it talks to you on an extremely high definition, super crisp, bitmap 9-inch black and white screen. It's really incredible, as many of you might have had a chance to see at the hands-on. We have one last hands-on at 9 o'clock tonight. This screen has over twice the dots of the IBM PC or Apple II on its screen. Very high definition. And all of this power fits into a box 1/3 the size and weight of the IBM PC. It's a truly transportable product. And in addition to that, there's a whole family of stuff that goes along with it. Image writer printers, external disk drives, modems, carrying cases, and a sort of security kit so your Macintosh doesn't go anywhere without you. Now, you've seen some pictures of Macintosh in these slides. But what I'd like to do now is show you the Macintosh in person. And all of the images that you will be seeing will be generated by what's in that bag right there. Now, we've been doing an awful lot of talking about Macintosh lately as well. But tonight, really for the second time ever, we'd like to let Macintosh speak for itself.
Hello, I am Macintosh. It sure is great to get out of that bag. Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, I'd like to share with you a maxim I thought of the first time I made an IBM mainframe. Never trust a computer you can't lift. Obviously I can talk, but right now I'd like to sit back and listen. So it is with considerable pride that I introduce a man who's been like a father to me, Steve Jobs.
Macintosh is targeted at two primary markets. And the first are those 25 million knowledge workers that sit behind desks, particularly in medium and small size offices. And the second is really the college worker, the people in colleges that we think are going to be the knowledge workers of tomorrow. And there's greater than 11 million college students in America alone. Now, the telephone, we look at the telephone and we're really impressed with the telephone because it was the first and really the only desk appliance. To be a desk appliance, you have to do something really useful, and you have to be really easy to use so people don't have to spend a lot of time learning how to use this thing, and you have to be really cheap. And we don't think there's been a desk appliance since the telephone. And what we want to do is make Macintosh the second desk appliance. Now, there are about 235 people in America, but only a fraction of them can use a computer. And the message that we have with Macintosh is that it's the computer for the rest of us. And we're going to launch the largest advertising campaign in our history ever to communicate this message to those knowledge workers and college workers. And it's going to kick off on the Olympics on February 6th. And I'd like to show you 5 of those advertisements right now.
It's more sophisticated, yet less complicated. It's more powerful, yet less cumbersome. It can store vast amounts of yesterday, or tell you what's in store for tomorrow. It can draw a picture, or it can draw conclusions. It's a personal computer from Apple, and it's as easy to use as this. Macintosh, the computer for the rest of us. Introducing Macintosh. It does all the things you'd expect a personal computer to do. It does a lot of things you wouldn't expect a personal computer to do. And it does some things no other computer has ever done before. Of course, to do all this, you will have to learn to do this. Macintosh, the computer for the rest of us. The real genius of Macintosh, Apple's newest personal computer, isn't its 32-bit microprocessor, or that it captures the power of a mainframe on a board 10 by 10 inches, or even that it costs half as much as computers half as powerful. The real genius of Macintosh is that you don't have to be a genius to use it. Macintosh, the computer for the rest of us. You're about to see a few people learn to use the newest, most advanced business computer in the world. If you know how to point, you already know how to use it. Macintosh, the computer for the rest of us. This is a highly sophisticated office computer, and to use it, all you have to do is learn this. This is Macintosh from Apple, also a highly sophisticated office computer, and to use it, all you have to do is learn this. Now, you decide which one is more sophisticated. Macintosh, the computer for the rest of us.
So if you watch the Winter Olympics, you'll be seeing those about 2 to 3 times a night. Now, you know that over 70% of all the computers used in education are Apples? And that makes us feel really good, because we care a lot about that. And it's a great leverage point for the Apple II as well. And most of them are, of course, in kindergarten through 12th grades, because that's where most of the schools are, and those schools have bought computers faster than the colleges. But a year ago, we went in search of about half a dozen colleges and universities throughout America that would be using a large number of personal computers in 1984, and large meant greater than 1,000. And we didn't find a half a dozen. We found 24 major colleges and universities. And we announced this last Tuesday the Apple University Consortium, which is formed of those 24 colleges and universities. All the 7 Ivy League schools are a part of this. They have placed over $50 million worth of orders today for Macintoshes. And they're going to be doing courseware development, leading the way really for over 3,000 schools in this country. And they're telling us that Macintosh is the ideal college computer. So we think you're going to see lots of Macintoshes on college campuses. And here's a list of them: Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Dartmouth, Brown, on and on. I think you're going to be seeing a lot of Macintoshes on campuses. Now, when we designed the Apple II, we designed it in a garage, but what most people don't know is we designed it to be built in a garage. And we figure if we ever made 50 of them a month, we'd be doing well. And we surpassed that goal this last December by over 2,000. We shipped over 100,000 Apple IIs in December. But what we wanted to do with Macintosh was make it the first personal computer that was designed from the start to be built in the millions. There's never been a personal computer that you could say this about. We are currently making over 500 Macintoshes a day in this factory. And we will be ramping up to 1 every 27 seconds within the next few months. Now, Macintosh was developed by a small team of people, less than 100, and you're going to have a chance to meet and ask several of them some questions tonight. And this group of people, they're more like artists than they are engineers. They're not really interested in careers. What they're interested in is doing something insanely great and then getting it out into the world to leverage their energy. And they were able to leverage the resources of a billion-dollar company in developing Macintosh. And I've never in my life had the privilege of working with such a fine group of people. And we think, Macintosh has changed our lives working with it over the last few years. And we think it's going to change the lives of millions of people that buy them. Macintosh, as you know, was probably one of the worst-kept secrets in the world. But one of the best-kept secrets was that we didn't just introduce one standalone product again. We introduced a family of 4 new 32-bit products this week. And we introduced Lisa a year ago, and it clearly captured the imagination and set the technical direction of the industry. It didn't capture as many desks as we wanted to. But it's clear that everyone's running in the direction of mice and windows and icons, and you've seen Vision, and you're seeing sort of the early part of MS Windows, and even a rumored IBM windowing package. But what we introduced, in addition to Macintosh, were 3 new Lisas. And the first one was Lisa 2. It has a 0.5 megabyte of RAM and a 3.5-inch disk, totally compatible with Macintosh. And we introduced it at $3,495, just $1,000 more than Macintosh. The second Lisa is Lisa 2.5. It added a 5 megabyte profile Winchester disk drive, and that was only $1,000 more again, $4,495. The third Lisa was Lisa 2.10. It's got a built-in 10 megabyte Winchester disk drive right above the floppy there, and it's $5,495. Now, all the Lisas we switched over to use the 3.5-inch floppy disk drive. We feel so strongly that it's the drive of the 80s. And it's totally compatible with Mac, and we're doing something for all the existing Lisa 1 owners. We are upgrading their Lisa 1 to a Lisa 2.5. That means changing the 3.5-inch disk drives, or changing the 5 1/4s for 3.5s, and giving them a new front bezel and some new software. And that upgrade's entirely free for all existing owners. So as we move forward with the second iteration of this technology, we absolutely don't want to penalize those pioneers, and so we're just pulling them right along with us at no additional cost. But the other neat thing about all the 3 new Lisas and all the Lisa 1s is that they're 100% Macintosh software compatible. We pulled it off. And together, these 4 workstations are the foundation of what we're calling the Apple 32 Supermicros. It's a family of compatible products based on Lisa technology and 32-bit architecture. And if you look at the 4 workstations, they now span a pretty wide range of price and performance, all the way from the key building block, which is Macintosh at $24.95, to sort of the flagship in performance, which is Lisa 210 at $54.95. Now, let me tell you a few other things in addition to workstations which are going to form the basis of this Supermicros family. The first thing is Apple Bus. Now, as you all know, local area networks, the whole area of local area networking is a joke right now. Ethernet never really took off. IBM's been promising the world a local area network now for 2 years and hasn't announced anything. And the last thing the world needs is another local area network. So what we're going to do is simply wait until those standards emerge and connect to those standards. But while those standards are emerging, people still want to hook things together, yet they don't want to pay $1,000 per computer to hook them onto some sort of network. And so what we've done is we have built in Apple Bus to every single Lisa 1, Lisa 2s, and Macintosh. It's built in. It operates at 230 kilobits per second, and it operates up to 1,000 meters, 1,000 feet. And for about $25 per computer, retail, you'll be able to buy a little box that screws on the back that simply has a little transformer and a few connectors in it, and hook up to 32 Macintoshes, Lisas, and peripherals together for virtually free. And we think that this will be a really good idea for the next 24 months until the networking really shakes out. Sort of think of it as freenet. The next thing that we need to do is we need to print out these amazing graphics that we can create. And we have the image writer printer, which we think is a pretty much of a breakthrough in terms of the price to do this. It sells for $595, and when you buy it with a Macintosh, it's $495. But something we're really excited about is higher resolution dot printing. And before the end of 1984, we will introduce a breakthrough in laser xerographic printing for under $5,000. And we're working very hard on that, and I think when you see the results, you'll be really happy. Next thing that we need is we need to talk to these big blue mainframes. And to do that, we've got a little box called the Apple Line box for about $1,000. It's available now, and it hooks up to any Macintosh or Lisa and talks full 3278 datacom with any IBM mainframe, does it as well or better than an IBM PC. This fall, you'll see small file servers in the 10 to 20 megabyte class that hook up to Apple Bus, and a shared Winchester that you can share among a bunch of Macintoshes and Lisas. It'll be very, very inexpensive. And then something that we'll hope to get out late this year or early next year is a Unix server. And we think Unix is a pretty lousy operating system to put inside a workstation. It's old technology and it's really big, and you need a Winchester, so you can never make the workstations cheap. But we think it's a great operating system when you're in a multi-user environment. And what we're going to be doing is coming out with a server, which is a large disk, a very fast CPU that hangs on the network, that allows you to run Unix and vertical applications on top of it and use the Macintoshes and Lisas as really sort of new wave terminals into that software. Now, we thought long and hard about whether we should come out with an IBM PC compatible. And we do a lot of market research. We have a pretty good brand out there in the marketplace, and we could have sold a lot of them. But that's not what we wanted to do. What we want to do is we want to establish a second standard in the office based on radical ease of use and the kind of power that these workstations are able to provide. But we know that if we're going to do that, we need to build bridges to the IBM world. We think there's 3 major bridges that we have to build. The first one, and most importantly, is for all the great software that runs in the IBM products, we've got to have better versions running on our Apple 32 workstations. And I think by this summer or early fall, we will have accomplished that goal. The second is local area network support. We expect IBM to introduce 1 or 2 local area networks in the April, May, June timeframe, and we will connect to the most prevalent of those networks. And the third is the 3278 data communications, which we're doing now. So we think if we build these 3 bridges to the IBM network, that we can continue to sell better computers. Now, if you go back about 100 years to the 1880s, there were approximately 25,000 trained telegraph operators in the United States. And you really could send a telegram between Boston and San Francisco, and it'd take about 3 or 4 hours and go through the relay stations, and it really worked. And it was a great breakthrough in technology that had been around for about 30, 40 years. And there were some people that talked about putting a telegraph machine on every desk in America to improve productivity. Now, what those people didn't know was about the same time Alexander Graham Bell filed the original patents for the telephone. A breakthrough in technology. Because putting a telegraph machine on every desk in America to improve productivity wouldn't have worked. People wouldn't have spent the 20 to 40 to 100 hours to learn Morse code. They just wouldn't have done it. But with the telephone, within 10 years, there were over 200,000 telephones on desks in America. It was a breakthrough because people already knew how to use it. It performed the same basic function, but radical ease of use. And in addition to just letting you type in the words or click in the words, it let you sing. It let you intone your sentences to really get your meanings across. We are at that juncture in our industry right now. There are people suggesting that we should put a current generation box on everyone's desk to improve productivity. A telegraph, if you will. And we don't believe that. We don't think it will work. People will not read those damn 400-page WordStar manuals. They won't carry around these cards in their pockets with 150/WZs. They're not going to do it. And what we think we have here today, finally, is the first telephone. And in addition to letting you do the old spreadsheets and word processing, it lets you sing. It lets you make pictures. It lets you make diagrams where you can cut them and paste them into your documents. It lets you put that sentence in bold Helvetica or Old English, if that's the way you want to express yourself. What we think we've done is we've gotten us back on the track of letting us bring this technology not just to people that have them hooked up to these big blue boxes in Fortune 500 corporations. Sure, we want to sell our products to those people. But what we're really doing, the reason we're doing what we're doing, is because we want to bring this to tens of millions of people. And never before has the time been riper, and never before, with our radically easier to use 32-bit technology, have we been closer to doing just that. So with that, I'd like to ask everyone to just stand up and relax for a few minutes, and we're going to put a few tables up here and bring the Macintosh software team and one of the members of the hardware team up here and answer whatever questions you might have about what we're doing. Thanks. About the piece that they did, starting with my right, your left, I guess. Yeah.
My name's Steve Capps, and I worked a little bit on the ROM, and I helped Bruce Horn with the Finder.
My name's Andy Hertzfeld, and I worked on a lot of the system software for Macintosh.
My name's Randy Wigginton, and I wrote the word processor.
My name's Bill Atkinson. I did the Quick Draw graphics primitives and the Mac Paint application.
I'm Bruce Horn, and I worked on the ROM little and on the Finder with Steve Capps.
My name is Burl Smith, and I designed the digital logic board for Macintosh.
I'm Owen Densmore, and I did the printing.
My name's Ronnie Seebach, and I wrote the mouse lesson that you get on your Mac guide and the font mover.
So if we have some really great questions, we'd like to answer them. But before we do, Bill and Randy are going to run through some really quick demos, which you'll be able to see up on that screen to give you a little feeling for the kinds of things that we can do.
I'm going to show you the Mac Paint graphics editor that runs on Macintosh and lets you edit images. Sometimes conveying your message goes better with pictures than with words. What you see when you open up Mac Paint is 3 palettes, a palette of current tools, a palette of patterns, and a palette of border thicknesses. To use them, you point with the mouse and click on a tool and press, stretch out a line here, and release when you've got the line. Or choose a different thickness and do the same. There are structured tools along here that let you make hollow and filled objects, like a filled rectangle here. Choose a pattern to fill it with, and here make a filled oval. You can erase parts of the image using this little thing that looks like a brick. It's supposed to be an eraser, but that's the best I could do. And if you just scrub with it, it kind of eats away. And after you get bored with scrubbing a lot, you can just click twice and it'll get rid of everything. This tool lets me draw a curved filled object, where when I let go of the mouse, it will complete the curve and fill it in. Or here, a polygonal object, where I just click at each vertex, and when I click twice, it finishes it off for me. Okay. A little more free-form tool is the brush tool. Here, I'll erase things here and draw something with the brush. It's a lot like scribbling with a crayon. You can use it in conjunction with a pattern. And for example, let's choose a large brush shape. You have a variety of shapes you can choose from. You just click on one, and we'll choose a big round brush here, draw with that. And somehow the patterns sort of magically line up. I'm a little nervous, so I'm not too good with the mouse. Okay. The next tool here is a spray can, and it lets me do smooth shading. I can kind of gradually shade in something, and the longer I spray, the darker it gets. For example, I might take this circle and turn it into a three-dimensional sphere by shading it in. Maybe I'll pick up a little bit of white paint and spray with that to put a highlight on it. And I can even control individual pixels. I can point at a dot and turn it on or off, and you have to kind of squint a bit, or you can go into fat bits, which lets you see a magnified view, and then it's easy for me to turn on and off bits. The hand tool lets me scroll. I can press on the document and push it around underneath the window.
That's incredible.
So up in the left-hand corner, I'm seeing a normal size view, and here I'm seeing a little bit magnified view so that I can act right on it. If you click in the small size view, you go back to normal size. If you have edges on your document, you can fill in areas using the paint bucket. Some people say it looks like a cap or graduation cap, but it's supposed to be a paint bucket pouring paint out the tip of it. So if you select a pattern and press, you can just fill in with that color of paint. It's like a coloring book. Then there's a tool for making text. You can point someplace and type. That's the first time I touched the keyboard. And I'm not a very good typer. Change the sizes and the emphasis things, etc. The next two tools at the top allow you to work on a portion of the image. The rectangle selector here says, I want to grab this rectangular chunk of the image. And you see little marching ants around it to help you distinguish what's selected. When you point inside the selection, you can pull on it and it'll come with you. If you hold down the Option key, then as you do so, it leaves behind the old one, so you can peel off a copy easily. If you hold down the Feature key, it stretches it instead. I'll undo that. Notice when I'm dragging this, it carries around a rectangle of white. Sometimes you want to select a non-rectangular selection, and notice this carries just the ball. I just lasso around the object. When I let go, the lasso tightens around it and gets just that thing. Again, Option will peel off a copy, and in fact, Feature and Option will peel off many copies. if I select a portion of image, I can also do edit commands on it. I can say to rotate that on its side, and that helps me when I want to put a label on the side of something. Or I can say to select a portion of the image and say flip that horizontally, or flip it vertically, or invert it. Many different transforms that I want to do onto the image. So far we've been working on one portion of the page. About a third of it is, well, you can see it on the screen, though you're dealing with a whole printer full, an 8 by 10 page. When you say show page, it'll show you the entire page, and it shows a rectangle that shows what portion you're looking at now. I can pull that rectangle down to another portion of the page to scroll to there and say, that's the portion I want to work on. And I prepared an image ahead of time, a little fish, and I'll select that with the lasso and copy that into the clipboard. This lets me take it between different documents. I can now paste that into another MacPaint document, or I'm going to quit MacPaint, and we'll even paste this into a word processing document. Randy Wigington is now going to show us the MacWrite word processor.
As incredible as MacPaint is, it's really nothing compared to the quick draw routines that... No, it's nothing compared to the quick draw routines that Bill wrote for the ROM, and he also wrote for Lisa. If it weren't for Bill, none of us would be up here on this stage. So I'd like to thank him for that.
I thought you were going to say compared to MacWrite.
No. No, it's a lot more interesting than a word processor. The whole thrust behind Mac is to make everything easy to use and very visually oriented. As Steve said, we didn't want you to remember a lot of escape/Command-Zs or anything like that. The whole idea is that whatever you see on the screen is what you're going to get on the printed page, and we wanted things to be simple and easy to use. With MacWrite, even though there's a lot of features, they're all very easy to use. For example, to type, all you do is you simply point the mouse somewhere, you click, and you start typing. Now you type. No great feat. You can also, however, go up and change the style. I'm going to type some underlined text. You can also type lowercase letters. Additionally, you not only have a choice of changing all the styles, but you can additionally change the size of any font that you're dealing in. I'm going to go to a larger font. Additionally, we have a large choice of fonts. All of these fonts come provided with each disc. One of my favorites is London, which is Old English. This is wonderful for writing letters to Mom. Sure. Really thinks you're getting a classic education this way. Another font that is one of my favorites is the one called San Francisco. This is used for Apple's new program called Cons Can't Wait. This isn't a very successful con. He has problems. You'll notice here that we have a document that was formatted with left and right margins. However, you haven't so far seen a way to control those. The way we do that is through the use of rulers. A ruler affects the format of the text from it up to the next ruler. If I simply say show rulers, we can see the ruler that's formatting all of this text here. We have choice. We have left margin in the first line indent. Over here we have a right margin. Here we have a tab stop. Here we have 3 buttons that determine the spacing of your document: single-spaced, 1.5 spaced, or double-spaced. You simply click on the box that you want to format the text according to your desires. We have center justify, right justify, or fill justify, where your margins are fully justified on both sides. We wanted you to see the printer image. The printing routines that were written by Owen Densmore do all the printing magic, so I can't claim credit there. Here's a table that we entered earlier. Additionally, we wanted you to be able to format tables featuring numerics and normal text and be able to change these and edit these as you wanted. We have 2 types of tabs: normal tabs and decimal tabs. These are tab wells that I can get extra tabs from. Here's a decimal tab. A decimal tab right justifies text up to a decimal point. Notice that this column, all of the decimal points are lined up. If we simply point at the tab, move it, and let go, the column will reformat underneath the new tab stop. Move it back. This is pretty useful for formatting tables and things like that. Well, earlier, Bill made a picture, and a picture's worth 1,000 words, and we thought we wanted to be able to handle that. So if you simply point and click, we can go ahead and paste, and the picture will now appear in the middle of your word processor document. This is pretty useful for illustrations and graphs and things like that. If you click on it, you can form a box around that. You can move the picture around. You can make your picture real small, make it real large. Fish is still ugly. We'll just make it look like a sardine. And one feature I forgot to cover was if you wish to replace some text. For example, I wish to have this letter written to trout rather than squid. You simply select the text you want to type in, and you type the replacement. Nothing else to remember. You can also go back and change any fonts anytime you want. We can select all of this. Let's put all of that in the San Francisco font. That's my favorite. And we can also make it all large. We can underline it. If you make a mistake at any time, no matter what you've done, you can always go back to the edit menu and select undo. And it will tell you what you're undoing, and we'll go back to the way it was before. If, for example, you had a lot of this selected, and as happens sometimes, your cat jumps on the keyboard and types that, you simply go up and you say undo, and you're back to where you were. We wanted to make it pretty forgiving so that you wouldn't curse at me later. Okay, thank you.
Do we have any questions we might be able to help answer? Yes, in the front.
About the sound generation. What is the chip, and how can we get information on writing music software for this?
Great. I'd like to ask Burl to talk a little bit about the hardware, and for Andy to talk a little bit about the software. Burl?
We don't use any particular integrated circuit. Rather, the sound generation hardware is fully integrated in with the logic and timings of the machine. In addition, there's software support that provides up to 4 voices of sound with 24-bit sound pitch control or speech that you heard today.
So basically the way it works as far as the hardware is concerned, Burl is fetching every 44 microseconds. He fetches an 8-bit value and throws it into a digital to analog converter. And it was up to me to make that easy to use and generate pitches out of that. So the way it sort of works is the sound driver wakes up at the end of every video screen and computes the next 370 values to fill the buffer with. It can do this in a variety of ways. The most common way is to use what we call the 4-voice sound generator. You can specify 4 totally different independent waveforms and a 24-bit pitch value for those sounds. And it will generate 4 simultaneous tones to do music type stuff. Of course, that isn't enough to do. That's great for doing periodic type sounds like music. But to generate speech, such as you heard demonstrated today, you need to be able to pump long waveforms through the speaker. So the sound driver also permits you to pump arbitrary waveforms scaled to any frequency rate through the speaker.
Okay, next. Yeah, in the back there.
You have an intermediate letter quality printer, which you talk about the laser printer and the dot matrix.
The question is, do we have an intermediate letter quality printer? The answer to that is yes and no. I'll handle the no first. No, we don't have one. Because we don't believe in them. We believe in letter quality output, but we believe in getting that through much higher resolution dot printing, such as a laser printer. The Macintosh hardware supports letter quality printing, and some people like Microsoft are going to probably support daisy wheel printers. The problem is, how do you print the fish with a daisy wheel printer? And how do you print Old English with the daisy wheel printer? Let me ask Owen Densmore to jump in. Since Owen wrote all the printing for Macintosh and Lisa, he's like a printing guru.
I'm not too sure what the question is, other than are we going to do something like that? The most important thing from my standpoint, and the largest challenge I faced when I worked on the Macintosh, was really to design the printing interface so it was a miniature application running inside the host program. It's fully configurable. It's rather easy conceptually anyway. You stay up a lot of nights working it out, as my family can attest. But it's a very configurable design. The idea being that if a given application sorely needs a daisy wheel printer to make the revolution happen, it will happen. Unfortunately, it's not very much fun, and Bill gets to have all this great time, you see, with this, with his graphics program, and I don't want to be left out. So I want to go after color. I want to go after higher resolution. I want to go after typesetters. I think that there's a big need for typesetting applications in the industry, and I think we're going to do that. I think that really is going to be more interesting.
One final note. If you look at the output that you get off a $500 image writer printer, it's pretty amazing. And we can't stand up in here and say it's letter quality printer, letter quality output that you might want to send out of a legal office. But with the exception of those kind of very high-end applications, you'd be surprised at how good it is. And the beauty of the fonts, in many cases, makes up for the slight lack of resolution. You ought to take a look at it. It's pretty good. Anything else? Yes.
Do you have any information on the new assembler for it that'll be available like in the third quarter?
The question was, do we have any information on a new assembler that will be available in the third quarter? I guess come grab one of us after the meeting. We'll try to fill you in on all that stuff. Yes.
What about communication with existing 8-bit software and 8-bit programs to interface them with using MacWrite, for instance, actually in both directions? How will it accept like an ASCII file?
Randy?
The terminal emulation program is coming from Apple in the very near future. That will allow you to bring files over. Of course, they won't have the formatting information since no one else does that right now.
Yes.
I have a couple of questions about the word processor. First of all, with the justification that you were demonstrating, it always affected the entire document. Now, most of the time, you wouldn't want to center the entire document. You might just want to center a header over the top, and then just leave the rest of the thing formatted. I wanted to see how that was done.
Do you have any other questions?
Trout with squid, which was very conveniently also 5 letters. What if you wanted to change it to halibut or...
Oh, these are hard questions. You can do whatever you like. Okay, any other questions? Yes, over there on the right.
What's the development environment? If we want to develop software for the Macintosh, do we get the Lisa 2s and do it there? Is it the same tools environment that's available on the Lisa?
What's the development environment, Steve Capps?
Currently, we're developing all the software on the Lisa, and we have this downloading program that you download your programs onto the Mac, and there's a debugging terminal that can be anything that talks ASCII. So you could get by with a Lisa and a Macintosh. In the future, we will hopefully be totally Macintosh-based.
Is the development language Pascal? Do you have
We have Pascal and 68,000 assembly language. We have versions of C up on the Macintosh. I'm not sure when they'll be available.
Yeah. Yes.
Earlier you mentioned how you were not going to abandon the Lisa 1 pioneers. What about the Apple IIe pioneers?
There's some, the question is, what about all the people that own Apple IIes? I would first of all say that you own the most popular serious personal computer of all time, number one. Number two, I think that statement's going to be true 3 years from now. See, the real interesting question is, when will we sell more of these in a quarter or in a month than we do Apple IIes or follow-on Apple II products? And I don't think that's going to be 1984, and I don't think it's going to be 1985. We sold 100,000, actually about 110,000 IIes in December. What happened was we had a sort of a flat October, because it's hard to compete against a product that doesn't exist. The minute that PC Junior was introduced, our sales went through the roof. And I think you're going to see an incredible commitment to the Apple II on the part of ourselves and that third-party community. We're spending as much R&D on the Apple II family as we are on the Apple 32-bit family. And as you've seen, we have the mouse on the Apple II. It actually runs pull-down menus in a sort of simplified version of Paint that Bill helped someone else do. And you're going to see a lot of stuff on the II. You're going to see some very exciting things in 1984 on the II, because we're really committed to that product. Yeah. A matter of fact, there's someone here tonight that we might want to bring up here that had a lot to do with the Apple II. Woz? Woz flew in from Seattle. We didn't know he was coming, and he just showed up here, and he's here. Any other questions? Yes. Do we have a spreadsheet program for Mac? Microsoft has announced a multi-plan for Macintosh, and it's in the stores now. And Lotus has announced 1, 2, 3 for Macintosh, and it's in their development labs now. Yes.
What about the availability for other things from Apple? You've mentioned, what, 27 computers every second, or 1 computer every 27 seconds? When are we going to get software?
The question was, when are you going to get software?
Mac terminal, logos, editors, other things from Apple.
As you know, the word processor and Paint are available now. We are rolling out the terminal program, I believe, in February, Mac Terminal. Mac Pascal is, I believe, March. Mac Logo, I think, is slipped. We've got a version of BASIC, which is really hot, that we've also slipped on probably in the May, June timeframe at the latest, although Microsoft's version of BASIC is going to be on the shelves within 30 days. Oh, it's available now. Oh, great. Great. Better. Any from the real back? Yeah, just stand up because we can't see you.
See color in a monitor in the near future?
Yeah.
And secondly, do you see a 3.5-inch diskette as a handicap in a 5-inch world?
Okay. The first question was, do we see a 3.5-inch diskette as a handicap? Clearly, we do not. We're storing, as we said, 400K bytes of information on one side of the diskette. You can throw these things, you can take them, and I would never do that with a 5.25-inch floppy, and I bet that diskette will still work. They're really tightly protected. They don't need these ridiculous jackets. They're very high capacity, and they're very reliable, and will allow us to build smaller and smaller products in the future. So we're really happy with that decision, so happy that we converted all of the leases over to it. And you can expect that all future 32-bit products from Apple will use that technology for floppy diskette storage. On the color side, we had a very interesting challenge and a choice. We knew how to do low-resolution color, which is the kind that you can get on current-generation personal computers. And we had a breakthrough on how to do high-resolution, high-definition black and white. And as you can see from the Macintosh display, it's very high-definition. We could not figure out a way to take very high-definition color, which currently sells for $15,000 to $20,000, and figure out how to put it in a box that would sell for $2,500. We don't think there's a way to do it today. So the question was, should we go with low-resolution color, which you really don't want to stare at all day, or high-definition black and white? And we chose the latter because there are a group of technologies converging around black and white. As an example, the technology that lets us do the very high-definition CRT in Macintosh. Secondly, someday we hope to put a Macintosh in a book with flat panel technology, which will most certainly be initially monochromatic. And the third is that laser printing technology is going to be monochromatic initially as well. So there appears to be a lot of these high-resolution black and white technologies converging in the next 3 or 4 years, which are going to allow us to blossom that out into a complete system. Someday there'll be color, and as a matter of fact, Bill built color into QuickDraw from day one. But the types of products for the next 24 months are going to be monochromatic. What's that? Animation. Animation, that's a great word. Software for animation? Andy?
Mac is capable of doing some incredible animation, and I'm sure you'll see some amazing animation editors working. Bill Budge is working on some games for Mac that I'm sure will blow your mind. Steve Capps wrote the Alice chess game, which you can see sometimes, which does some amazing 3D animation.
You don't happen to have that, do you?
No, I've got it.
No? You got it?
Yeah, I'm gonna get it.
Oh, go get it, yeah. Great. Yes.
I can see where Mac White would be much easier to learn than WordStar, but once you know all the commands, which would be faster, using the cursor or using the commands?
The question is, after you become an expert, is the mouse still a feature or a handicap? Would anybody like to answer that, or you want me? Anybody else?
It depends a lot on the individual user. I'm sure different people will prefer different things. I think all of us up here who've had experience with the mouse far prefer using the mouse to cursor keys.
Absolutely. The question, there's a few questions. First of all, we've got to do traditional things better with the mouse, and then we've got to do the untraditional things. Now, we all know that it's hard to draw a fish with cursor keys. So we can start off there. The second thing is that even after you become an expert, we've done a lot of testing, it does take some extra time to get off of the keyboard and find the mouse, and then get back to the keyboard in home position once you've used the mouse. But even with that delay, it is faster, number one. And number two, after you've selected something, the chances are extremely high that you want to act on that selection, i.e. go up to the top of the screen and the menu bar. And since you're already on the mouse, if you add up both of those, it's much, much faster than cursor keys, in addition to being able to draw fish. Yes.
Will students in universities that aren't in this elite consortium also be allowed to buy the Macintosh for $1,000?
The question is, will students who go to schools that are not part of this consortium be allowed to buy the Macintosh for $1,000? The answer is no.
Why not?
Because we go broke. We are currently trying to broaden that program out to probably a larger number of schools in a second-generation program. But we're not ready to roll on that right now, and certainly every school has called us about it. So we're in the process of figuring out exactly what to do. But again, our goal is to get these to tens of millions of people. And we know that college students can't necessarily afford $2,500 in that point in their life. So we're going to try some creative solutions to that. Yes?
Could we have Woz talk about the future of the Apple II?
Sure.
Just vaguely and generally, future of the Apple II? Right, we've got some of the most excited, Apple enthusiasts in our personal computer systems division, of which I'm a part, and we're working on some absolutely great, what we believe are great revolutionary changes in the world coming out of our division. We've got several great products on the way for this year, not all computers. And, well, I can't say too much more because I'll be specifically describing products in the works.
Yeah.
I own 4 Apple IIs. What about upgrading those to 2Es?
Apple IIs to 2Es. I'm still hoping that someone does it, and I'm pushing for it, because a 2E has been around for about a year, and maybe it's been seen for a year before that by some developers, but a lot of the features of the 2E that went beyond the 2 Plus don't get used right away because there's no really mass market. The software does not use double high, and it does not use the extended memory of the 2E. That software is about to start appearing, eventually. But it turns out the whole Apple market strongly is very supportive of its prior customers and the people who bought the 2 Pluses. And that's been the nature of things. So the 2E software has not really started appearing yet. In other words, using features of the 2E that don't work on your 2 Plus. When that happens, there may be a need for a card.
Way in the back there. Yeah. No, you.
2 questions. How are you getting video out of the Mac onto the screen? And do you have a version of Smalltalk that works?
2 questions. One, how are we getting the video out? And second, do we have a version of Smalltalk? We're getting the video out. We add a little board inside the Macintosh that allows us to bring out video. Unfortunately, the Macintosh, fortunately, the Macintosh's screen is very high resolution. What that means is you can't plug it into an ordinary TV. And so we didn't spend the extra, $10 it would cost to build a video output into each Macintosh because nobody'd have anything to hook it up to anyway. So for those people that really need it, we can do a special version which has an output, which is what's feeding this projector. In terms of Smalltalk, Bruce Horn actually has implemented several Smalltalks. He was at Xerox PARC at an early age. And I'll let him talk about that.
Well, none of us are really working on a version of Smalltalk, but I can say that there's going to be a version of Pascal that has a lot of the good qualities of Smalltalk that Think Technologies is doing, and I heartily recommend that. I'm sure that somebody will do a version of Smalltalk for it at some point, but for the time being, I think the Think Technologies thing is the greatest in the world.
Yes, the one I missed before. Right, you, quick stand up. No, not, see, you missed it again.
The Apple III family, which is sort of fallen by the wayside, it seems. Is there going to be a 2E emulation mode for the 3? Is there going to be continued support for the 3? What's going to happen?
Is there going to be continued support for the Apple III? See, I wouldn't call on you if I knew that was your question. No, seriously. We're shipping about 2,500 Apple IIIs a month, and 80% of those are going to people that already own Apple IIIs, which means two things. One, the 3 is a pretty niche product, and two, people are really happy with them. So we anticipate making 3s until the cows come home. With the upgrade of ProDOS on the Apple II software environment is now much closer to the Apple III software environment, and you're going to see much more of a migration of software between those two. So I think the 3's got a pretty long life ahead of it. It's probably the 4th largest selling product in the industry right now, and we sort of look at it as our big brother to the Apple II. Do we have any more questions for the software group up here rather than sort of general marketing ones while they're here? Yeah, right up there. Does Macintosh do multitasking or not? Who wants to answer that one? Andy?
Macintosh does a sort of limited form of multitasking. We allow, as you've seen, these little desk accessory programs such as the calculator and the puzzle we were running. The application yields time to the desk accessories to allow them to run concurrently with the current application, but right now we have too limited a memory to permit huge programs to run simultaneously. I think probably you'll see something like that in the future.
Steve? Yes, Owen?
When you ask about multiprocessing, one of the things you have to keep in mind is what you're really looking for. For example, in printing, it's possible to use it as a background-foreground use, put it in that kind of usage. So, for example, in printing and in many other places throughout the system, we use something called an idle procedure, a procedure that's passed into other packages that will be called at times when the first one is busy. I know that wasn't too clear. But the idea being that by using something more like a coroutine, you get many of the features of multiprocessing for free. So to be very specific, when you look at multi-chart, or excuse me, multi-plan, you'll notice that when you're printing, the application comes back to you and you can still edit it. And that coroutine type mechanism will give you that type of multiprocessing.
Okay, one or two last questions and we got to turn it back over to Jonathan. Yes, right straight.
Are you going to see more than 128K in one drive in the Mac?
Will there ever be more than 128K in one drive in a Mac? Yes and no. Burl has designed the board to accept 256K RAM chips in addition to the 64K RAM chips. So someday when we can get a large enough supply of 256K RAMs, there will be a 512K Mac, and there will be an upgrade path for all the existing owners to bring in their digital board and swap it out for a 512K digital board at a certain price. And that's going to be real exciting. It would probably be about 1985, hopefully in the first half, when we can do that. In terms of the second disk drive, we're not going to build a second disk drive in the Mac for 2 or 3 reasons. First of all, we don't want everyone to have to pay for a second disk drive when only some people will use it, so the people that will use it can get an outboard disk drive. Secondly, it would have increased the weight in terms of it being a transportable small product, and we didn't want to do that. And the third thing is some people may choose to get an add-on Winchester, a direct connect Winchester, rather than a second disk drive, and why burden them with having to pay for the second disk drive? So I think that we'll stick with one disk drive. Again, I think sometime maybe, in the first half of 1985, we might be able to go to double-sided drives, and obviously, again, we'll provide some sort of upgrade path for the existing owners. It's hard to tell right now. One last question. Over there.
Okay. You have wonderful graphics, word processor, spreadsheets. Do you have any plans for a database management system?
Do we have any plans for a database management system? A lot of people have plans for a database management system on Macintosh. Yeah, I think you'll see half a dozen of them by fall. Okay. Thank you very much. And remember that when you use a Macintosh, these are the people that did it. And they're sort of hiding out in that ROM. Thanks.
Surprised to come out here and I noticed, you know, different pieces of software, just different brands than I'll see on the West Coast. So it's obvious to me that the marketing of software is generally regional for a lot of stuff.
Like, what would you have out there that you might not get here just for the hell of it?
I have no idea. I can't remember specifically. How can I remember? Because I go through so many hundreds of pieces of software. Also, but it's just in my travels out here. It's usually I'm surprised because it's different, you know, similar pieces, but I never even heard of them, which surprises me. And also, and yet they are in the duplicates, and they're just not in the, you know. And I haunt the stores back there.
Where are your most excited users? In which part of the country?
Most excited? They're actually everywhere, and generally you can be out in some of the most just rural, you know, areas of Kansas, and you discover there's a huge Apple following out there. We're in Silicon Valley, and you know, it seems to go up and down. It almost depends which group you're in with and which stores they haunt.
Do you do a lot of traveling for Apple now?
No, matter of fact, I do a ton of traveling, but it's all for myself because I feel that we sprung from a bunch of people who got together like this and shared. I need this. What kind of hardware is around, and it's good. So I go about maybe once a month on the average for the last few years. I go anywhere in the country to clubs that invite me to speak and shows and all, and I just tell them a lot of the stories of how we got started and where we stand, and I answer all questions, and I do it at my own expense because I don't really want to feel like I'm being paid to tell a story exactly the way Apple's public relations department wants it told. I just tell it the way it is.
Can you tell us anything about that Rana 8088 that you're that's coming out?
I can't talk much about that. It's you know, I'm looking forward to it, but I really do see the 68000 as my personal interest in growth paths and not the 8088 or 8086. Matter of fact, I was instrumental in taking a hard line against the 8086 for our Lisa machine before the 68000 came out when we were trying to decide which processor. And I was proposing some bit slice arrangements of my own, and we didn't go too far on that before the 68000 was much more, it was there and it was much better.
Will it be possible, since the motherboard of the 2E has got room, to be able to put a 68000 chip and utilize and update Apple 2E that way? Or let's say an updated
we're so strongly
version.
into any Apple II product we come out with. Building in a coprocessor is a little bit too radical for us. We take very small steps, so we're extremely compatible with what went before. We don't take a major extreme step that's much better, but not compatible with what happened before. It can be done. I think a more logical way to get there is Apple IIs always have slots. Maybe a specific Apple II that is designed with a special slot for 8086 cards and 68000 cards. For some reason, a special slot might be added that supports those cards better.
We have a font editor, which is how they design all of the fonts. A woman named Susan Kerr designed all the type of fonts. Yeah.
How many characters can you put across the screen if you put the smallest?
You put really small ones. I would assume over 100, 120. And 9-point font is the smallest font that we have. 72 is the largest that QuickTry generates.
Will there be other fonts available?
Anybody can design any fonts that they want. You know, we're going to be distributing the font editor to users groups. It's not a perfectly polished program, but we decided we wanted to get it on the market. And yeah, you can design your own, and with this font move, where you can move them into your system, and then they're accessible to all the programs. It's basically, we have a system where fonts reside in resources, they're resource files, and every program knows to look there for the files.
What if I wanted to make a little newspaper that had 2 columns with very tiny print? Would that be
Okay,
possible?
the word processor right now doesn't do columnar word wraparound, which is what you ideally want, right? You want, once you've gotten to the bottom of the page here, to be able to wrap around up there. There are word processors that are coming out, I'm sure, that will be doing that. This current one doesn't support.
But on the screen, could you put 2 columns? You could let's paste from one to another.
You certainly could. Sure. Sure. Yeah. No, I worked on the mouse lesson, which is the first thing that anybody's going to be using. It's a little demo program that teaches mouse dexterity, pointing and clicking techniques. It's just a challenge in showing off a machine to a simple user.
Very shortly, we'll start producing those machines that will be both 220 and 110.
For changes like that, like in the power supplier, maybe if you make some motherboard changes, what are you going to do for existing?
Probably, I'm not sure, something like that will be available, although it's possible if you have a real need for it, just write a letter to someone and they'll see what they can do. But that's terrific. Every Mac from day one supports the international market through lots of different character sets. All our programs are easily translatable. Here's something that we didn't tell you, but the same facility that lets you translate your applications to different languages allows you to customize your applications to your own needs. So you can actually change the menu items to be whatever you like them to be for yourself.
That's the resource editor, which isn't around,
that's the resource editor.
Yeah.
It's available now to developers, but right now it's not polished enough to make it. Right now you can use it to kill yourself.
Okay, I'm planning on being a developer.
Yeah, so developers get it, but you have to be a knowledgeable, sophisticated user right now to avoid changing something you shouldn't change. In other words, it's a powerful joy. Yeah, that's right. 1960. And we have lots of fun with it, just changing around. We get programs from other people, and we can change around the menus and the icons and the dialogues. It's a lot of fun.
Going to be able to design your own.
Actually, you're responsible for designing an icon. When you produce an application, you have to put in this special part of the file, the icons for the Finder to use for your program. And yeah, we have some funny icons. He's done some great ones.
This is going to be fun. I hope we can get Apple approval. We should. We've done half a dozen products for the 2E.
Oh, sure.
Where are the icons? We're in store them right now.
Okay, what happens is they're stored in the resource part of an application file. When the Finder comes in, it recognizes an application it's never seen before. It pulls those. The Finder sort of says, "Hey, I've never seen this guy before." Looks inside it and finds its icons and pulls it out into one of its own internal files. So it doesn't have to keep all the applications open. Just copies the parts of it needs, mainly the icons, into this file called desktop. And that's why it can do it. Yeah, that's why even when the disk is not in there, you can still display the icons, etc.
Once you want to do something that's going to require the disk, then you're in trouble because you have to get the disk back
You're not
again.
in trouble. It will just ask you to stick the disk back in. It says, please insert the disk, and it gives you the name of the disk. We did that because we realized that a lot of people have 2-drive software, but we wanted it to run on a single drive if the human was willing to be the multiplexer.
Gets a little confused if both disks have the same name.
Sorry.
So, you can do that. It works, even though it's a little bit of a pain in the neck to swap disks so many times.
What do you think is the most? You have a question?
I say you build up your wrists.
He's the guy who wrote that amazing chess program that you saw on the screen, as well as the Finder program and lots of other stuff.
The sort of perspective view.
Yeah. The neatest thing I think about that is the fact that it's so vanilla that all I do is call Bill Atkinson's routines, and most games you sweat your brain out trying to make the thing so tuned. Like Bill Budge, when he writes his games, he's squeezing every last drop out of that machine, and that's squeezing maybe 10% of the machine. And so people that are maniacs are going to stay up all night squeezing the last drop out of the machine are going to blow that out of the water.
And also, people with just good ideas, but who don't want to develop the technical skill it takes to be an assembly language hacker will still be able to write great games, because we've done all the hard graphics work for them.
Including the animation?
Including the very fast and powerful graphics it takes to do the animation.
Because it looks like you could do...
You still have to be a good artist. Like, I can't draw pictures like that. And you need to find someone who can to make a really pretty game.
Someone will market a picture library.
Most of the traditional games have very small amount of definition information in their objects because they're very small objects typically, and you can't tell.
Yeah. You can animate, I'd say, 3 or 4 or 5 square inches with no problems at all on this thing. And if you really
Bill
got
figured he can draw in. Bill Budge was working on this space shuttle animator, and he figures he can draw the full screen with a very complex image over 10 times a second. And
in this system?
Yeah.
That's what, how many polygons? 64 polygons?
That's tons of polygons.
Real animation? It's tons of polygons.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So can you do similar to sprites? Like
better than sprites, because it's all software based. You're not limited by the artificial restrictions of in sprites. You're just your imagination is the only thing that really limits you.
The one thing, there's an alternate screen that you can be painting this screen off. You know, this one's being displayed, and then in a fraction of a second, you know, faster than the eye can see, you can switch to the other one. So yeah,
just like the Apple II.
So that way you get, you know,
how many do you have? Just 2?
Just two. Two is all you ever need, right? Because while one's being displayed, you paint the other one.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you can't paint it with frame times a 60th of a second, if you can't paint your image that fast, you can paint it a little bit slower, but do the flip, which is instantaneous. So you don't
Video
see
synchronously.
You don't see any
glitches or flashing. You can sort of plug into the video heartbeat of the system. The system, you can arrange for the system to call you every time during vertical retrace, which is an excellent time to do display updating because the video's not active then, and do incredible smooth animation, never flickers.
How's interrupt support? Can you get?
Oh, fully interrupt driven, asynchronous I/O.
Because the original Lisa had that problem that it wasn't easy to get to interrupts. I hear.
It's reasonably straightforward. You have to know what you're doing, and it's real easy to crash things if you do something wrong.
Right.
But as long as you follow the conventions that are well defined, you can do whatever you want.
The best one is if you shut off interrupts, the mouse stops moving.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Got the hint that might happen since you can move the mouse around while it's turned into a watch and doing disc reads.
Oh yeah.
Well, there's people that claim you can't do cursors on mice without hardware support.
That's nothing.
Yeah, I write ColecoVision cartridges part-time, so that's why I'm asking questions about sprites and all that stuff.
Oh yeah. It's nothing to me beats a straight bitmap and a fast processor.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden the limitations go away.
That's what's not in that chip, but there are some neat things in there. But.
Oh yeah. Video digitizers, cheap video digitizers, will let people capture any image that they see in the world and put it on the screen and edit it with paint and use it for games.
Yeah. Digitized.
Oh, that came from a folder or something like that?
Yeah, some amazing video digitization stuff. And what he's going to do is provide to the club, such as this Boston Computer Society, discs full of flip art. Just images that you can paste into your documents.
Oh, like a fake book for graphic artists or something.
Exactly.
Or old...
So you'll see Dover sells all those copyright-free designs.
So we'll put a bunch of that stuff in the public domain, and I imagine a lot of artists will want to do some real fancy ones and sell them.
In fact, somebody's selling clip art for the Lisa right now.
Right now?
Pascal is...
You just stick in a disc and take the images you want and then pull it out and put something else in. Okay. Well, thanks very much for your kind explanations.
What's with the feet, by the way? He actually, for Christmas, he bought the entire software group shoes like this. I like them.
They're great.
Yeah.
You can't buy them here?
I've never seen them.
What are they? They're sort of like...
They're called Vans.
They're sort of like step-in slippers?
Yeah. Oh, they have high tops. The name of the shoe is Vans.
Put in a plug for Vans.
You can buy them here? Yeah, you can. Oh, okay.
What everybody's wearing now are white high-top sneakers, unlaced.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
If they fall off?
No,
I guess not.
No, they have them very carefully. Well, no, they're laced, but they're not tied tightly.
Oh, okay, I see.
They're very carefully, very artistically laced.
All right, we gotta.
They're untied.
God, we're behind.
I know, we gotta start a new trend here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Commodore welcomes you to Lincoln Center. My name is Bob Truckenbrode, Vice President of Marketing for Commodore. And I will be your host for what promises to be a very exciting exhibition. For tonight is the world's premiere of Amiga.
Good evening. What you are about to witness is the result of an effort of research and engineering that began in 1982 and which to date has consumed over 100 man-years of engineering talent, the Amiga computer. On this screen, at the upper right, you see the icon for the workbench disk, which we used to start the system. To the side of it, you find a window containing the icons of the top drawer of that disk. You see the clock and preferences tools, utility programs available under the workbench. And you see a selection of drawers containing other tools, projects, or other drawers. At Amiga, the user controls how he uses his time, not the computer. To give you another perspective, I'd like to bring up TextCraft, the word processor of the Amiga computer. TextCraft has a very rich user interface involving menus, cursor icons which change shape depending upon what portion of the screen you're operating in, and a very rich graphical display to make sure that the user always understands what is going on. Let's talk a little bit more about the graphics that the Amiga computer can produce. We're going to bring up a test pattern showing all 4,096 colors of the Amiga computer on screen simultaneously. I'd like to bring up one more static image. This is an image that's been in the graphics community for some time, the infamous mandrel, shown here in 640 by 400 pixel resolution. Now for one other item. All of these pictures you've been seeing have not only been brought up in screens, they've been brought up in windows. In fact, there are 2 copies of the mandrel up there. I wouldn't want to meet that in a dark alley. The static graphics of the Amiga computer are impressive. But the real exciting thing on the Amiga is its dynamic or moving graphical images. Operating in screens, hardware area fill. As you can see, the screen system works even with dynamic graphics. Firmware support for the area fill system handles the general case, including crossing edges and islands. The Amiga computer is a true multitasking computer. In the upper left, a printing application. On the right, a sorting application with variable fonts. Graphics in the middle, and word processing at the bottom. What does this mean from a practical standpoint? It means that a user can bring up displays faster than ever before. It means that a user can control his own path through an analysis of a business or engineering problem. We're going to bring up a couple of 3-dimensional charts for you now to show you what I mean. The interesting thing about these charts is that they're being built from data built into the program. This really is how long it takes to build a chart like this once the data has come in off the disk. There, a bar chart, now a pie chart. All running in windows, in screens. They're both there at the same time. You can switch back and forth between them at will until you get all of the information you need to out of them. Anything that can be displayed on the Amiga can be created on the Amiga. Equally exciting is the sound generating capability of the machine. The Amiga contains 4 hardware sound channels, each capable of reproducing arbitrary waveform polyphonic sound. And with all 4 of these channels going simultaneously, the 68,000 is idle. But let me give you just a taste of the types of sounds the Amiga computer can produce. Here we have a sound sampler program. Let's try the claves. The bass capabilities of the Amiga computer exceed the reproduction capabilities of most people's stereos. This is best demonstrated with a percussion sound, like the tom-tom. We even have a few outrageous sounds on here. My favorite is the power chord. The sound system of the Amiga computer is capable of generating many more sounds than those you just heard. It's also capable of generating speech, a system which truly speaks for itself.
This is the Commodore Amiga personal computer speaking. I can speak in the male voice. And the female voice. I can speak very quickly. And I can speak slowly. I can speak in a very expressive voice. Or I can change the mode and speak in the monotone just like a real computer.
The real power of the Amiga computer comes in what we would call animation. Depending upon your perspective, you might call it real-time dynamic analysis or simulation. What it involves is the generation of synchronized, high-performance dynamic graphics, synchronized with sound and multitasking. I'd like to bring up one more animation now. This one, Robo City. There's quite a lot going on in this image. If you look at the right times, you'll see animation on top of animation on top of animation with correct saving and restoring of the background. You see multitasking going on here. The fire hydrant and the dog that don't like each other are separate tasks doing a proximity check. Again, all written on top of the standard support routines, given away with every Amiga computer. You know, it's hard. It's hard to be innovative in an industry which has been dominated by one technology for so long. We at Commodore Amiga knew that to do this, we would have to be at least an order of magnitude better than anything anyone had ever seen. We've done that. And then we decided, why stop there? Why not include that older technology in what we had already done? And so we did that too. The result is this, the emulator, which turns your Amiga computer into an IBM personal computer. Yes, it's done in software. How does it work? That's a secret. How well does it work? Judge for yourself. This is an IBM PC-DOS system disk. And this is a data disk from an IBM PC. And this is a program that I think at least a few of you in the room are probably familiar with. Lotus 123. Standard vanilla IBM DOS. At this point, we'll swap in the Lotus system disk and switch over to Lotus. I apologize for the delay, but it takes exactly as long to load 123 on an Amiga computer as it takes on an IBM PC. Now we're going to load in a data file off of that IBM data disk I showed you a moment ago. This is an income statement of the famous Acme Widget Corporation. As you can see, they're anticipating a loss in 1985, but we've changed the cost of goods sold for them, and with a simple recalculation, they make a profit. Traditionally, we end all demos of the Amiga computer with one of our original graphic demos, produced way back in '84. It's an old standby, but still one of my favorites. In living color, on multiple screens, follow the bouncing ball. Well, there you have it, the Amiga computer. We've lived our dream and seen it come to life. Now it's your turn. What will you do with the Amiga computer? Thank you.
We have asked our resident Amiga artist, Jack Hager, to sit in with them.
Are you ready to paint me?
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here tonight to help assist Andy do his first computer portrait using the Amiga computer. First off, Andy is going to take a digital snapshot of Debbie, which is running on this system, and you can see the image up there on that screen. And we just select the image and it comes down. You found it to be very spontaneous, haven't you?
Yeah, it's great. It's such a great thing.
What more can you say?
Well,
I can
does
say
a lot of things.
Oh, that looks very good.
So now we'll do the hair. So we'll go up to color and pick yellow.
Andy is selecting from the menu bar, which gives you all the features of the paint system, and he's selecting fill. And this is a slow version of the fill, just so you can see how Andy decides to work. Now this is an instance of a leaky flood film.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of pretty. I think I'll keep it.
Okay.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Well, with that piece being finished, Andy, I've been asked to give you an interview, forgive the pun. What computers have you worked on before?
Oh, I've worked on anything. I've waited for this one.
Really?
Well, it's obvious that Amiga will be many things to many people. So many things, in fact, that we had to think long and hard to come up with a symbol, an emblem worthy of such a talented computer. In order to communicate Amiga's phenomenal animation components and color capabilities, we focused on classic beauty and truly superior performance. And tonight, on this stage, that emblem is about to come to life. are denied.
Experience the mind unbounded. Amiga, the first personal computer that gives you a creative edge.
I never found out why he chose me to share his secret. Perhaps because we had similar dreams. But this was twice as fast. Twice as powerful as anything I'd ever thought possible. Though what that meant, I could never have foreseen. Incredible graphics. And colors. So many colors. Our world would never be the same again.
You want one word?
An Amiga? Right on.
Amazing Amiga, that's it.
I was going to say awesome, but that sounds like a cartoon.
Radical, and it's certainly a radical machine.
Awesome. One word? Amiga. Friend. You know, I mean, that's what it means.
The Amiga has always belonged to the dreamers. It was invented by an eclectic band of individuals led by Jay Miner, a group that became close friends with an active sense of humor, an overactive work ethic, and an almost childlike enthusiasm. They set out to make their dream computer, one they'd like to use themselves, real cool, real fast, with lots of power and lots of whizzy demos. The team was brilliant, creative. Without a thought, they abandoned the stodgy conventions that said computers are computers and toys are toys. And whether you believe the Amiga is a game machine or a business machine, there's no denying that the combination of power and graphics was a revolution in computing. Only now are the other computers beginning to meet the standards that the Amiga inventors set almost 10 years ago. That original Amiga team created the machine. They brought to it their unique personality and put out something totally new. Their story is unique. It tells of entrepreneurship, passion, trust, courage, and friendship. It's a very personal story. It belongs to Jay and Dave and Carl, the four Bobs, and all the others at Amiga. It can't be told by anybody else, so when we decided to record the story, we brought the original members together, collected their personal photographs, and borrowed their home film footage. Here, in their own words, is the story of the making of the Amiga.
Well, it was in 1982. A friend of mine that I used to work with at Atari came to me and said, "Hey, Jay, let's start a new company. I'm tired of this one." And I said, "Well, fine." I said, "I'll do the chips for it, and I'll be the vice president if I can do the chips my way." My original vision of the machine was as a low-cost entry into the computer field via the video game area. Video games at that time were really hot, and all our investors wanted was a video game. But I wanted something that could be expanded into a real computer. We got a vice president out from back east called Dave Morse, a president rather, called Dave Morse, who was vice president of Tonka Toys, came out to be our president, and started a little company over on Scott Boulevard in Santa Clara called High Toro. And High Toro later got its name changed to Amiga Corporation.
High Toro, which is interesting. High meaning big, great, grand. Toro meaning bull.
The first thing I thought of when I saw that name was lawnmowers. And so I think that when they talked to other people about it, they got the same impression too, that it was a lawnmower company. So they changed it. And Amiga Corporation was what it was when I joined. And Amiga was, they chose the name Amiga because they were looking for something that meant friend or friendly.
But in Silicon Valley, there is an extremely high concentration of computer companies, and there's a lot of spying that goes on all the time, and people trying to take ideas from other people and trying to outdo one another. And so it's really important to conceal what you're doing and to, at least to not broadcast around the things that you're working on, especially with the project that we're working on, with the ideas that we had. We thought that we had a gold mine in our hands and that we were going to be able to do something really major with this idea. So we had to hide it as much as we could for as long as we could. And so they set the company up to the real world to look as if it was High Toro and then Amiga Computer, a company that made game peripherals. And the industry said, "What's that new company over there on Scott Avenue?" And they went and they looked with their binoculars in the window and they saw, "Oh, joysticks, no problem, okay." When I first interviewed at Amiga, it was very interesting. I was there to do a game machine. I got hired to work on, the next greatest game machine that's going to be the greatest thing. And I'm talking with everyone, and I interviewed with everyone, and I talked with the harder guys, and I talked with them, and I'm talking with Dave Morse, and he's giving me the spiel, the next greatest machine, and it's going to be wonderful, take the game industry by storm. And then I made my way back to Jay's office, and I'm talking with him to get a feel for the real, what the hardware is really like and stuff like that. And he's got a whiteboard behind him while we're talking, and it's, RAM and CPU and stuff like that. But there's this one little box that comes off in the corner that has KBD PRT on it. It's a keyboard port on a game machine? There's this other little box down here, EXT DRV. External drive on a game machine? So I go back, I talk to Morris and say, game machine, right? Game machine, yeah, game machine. I go, Jay, game machine? He says, yeah, game machine, yeah, game machine.
I was the first software guy that Bob Pariseau hired. And when I was hired as manager of entertainment software because I'd worked in the video game business. And I soon found out there are not a lot of starving startup companies that want to put aside all their other projects and work on a vaporware computer, which it totally was back then. And plus also I found out I'd much rather hack code than try to get other people to hack code.
I was hired as the manager of operating systems. And the day I got there, actually, the day I was interviewed there, Bob Pariseau said to me, "Well, if you come here, you can design whatever operating system you want." I said, "I'll do a multitasking operating system." So that's why I went to work at Amiga, was the multitasking operating system.
First, when I had my first interview, I had talked to the recruiter and she set up an interview. And, but I accidentally blew it off because I went to I forgot all about it. I went to an HP beer bust, which was important too. But I looked at my watch at 7 o'clock and I go, oh my gosh, I just missed an interview that I was really looking forward to go to. So the next day I called him up and said, well, gee, I'm real sorry. can I have another interview? Can we schedule another time? And they said, oh, sure, fine, just come on down whenever you can. And so I knew that there was a pretty good atmosphere there when that happened.
I'm interviewing with Gary McCoy, for whom I was supposed to work. And he takes me back into the software lab where everybody is all over everybody else. And I guess you guys were really used to giving demos to venture capital people and such. So I come through with Gary, and the talking heads are on, and I'm awestruck. I'm watching this thing. But it was very loud in there. Very loud and very warm. I mean, if it wasn't the voice, there were the fans in the background. And so I'm watching this, and Gary's getting very frustrated because he was proud of what we were seeing. And finally just exploded. Knock it off, he screams, and I was trying to calm him down. I'm interviewing from a job and pissing everybody off. So he said, I said, don't worry, Gary, I can understand. I can lip read. And so after the demo, Sam comes up to me and says, really? Could you read the lip? And I looked at him and I said, well, how close was it? Was it pretty close? I was joking not to make Gary, but I thought, this is perfect. This is the best company to work for.
He was really working on that.
Well, now that Jay is here, I can tell the story in front of Jay, so he can agree that, in fact, it's true. Everybody seems to think Jay is the father of the Amiga. And when you look at Jay and the real father of the Amiga...
This one, my badge.
Yes, that's right on his badge. Even they made the same mistake. It's quite natural. One magazine back in the Amiga days got it right, but everybody laughed at it like it was some sort of a joke, but it was actually the truth. Jay was holding Mitchie in his arms. Right next to Mitchie, it said the father of the Amiga, and up here it said Jay. And yeah, this is Jay. This is the father of the Amiga. We knew inside that this was a true story because we're sitting there at our desk designing stuff, and Jay, who sat in front of us, was sitting at his desk designing stuff. And he'd get to some spot where he wasn't sure. Well, do I put this gate here? Do I put... And he thinks about it and see, draw a gate. He'd look down at Mitchie. And Mitchie would go, and so he'd erase it, And he'd draw another gate. And he'd look down at Mitchie. Mitchie would go, and so then he would put that gate in. We know because we were there. Mitchie did the Amiga. Jay, Jay did the drawing. It's all right. It's okay. But I wanted you to be here so that you could not shoot me.
Well, allowing people to be different is terribly important. This guy would come to work in these huge, fuzzy bathroom slippers. Or bare feet. Yeah. Michael Plotnick would come to work in purple sweatpants. We could go on and on and on this way. I came to work with my dog, Everybody had something that they wanted to do. And who cares, as long as you get the work done.
There was magic. I can't describe it. From the day I walked in and I saw that demo and I saw everybody contributing, cooperating, always a smile, always a smile, always the optimistic attitude and care for somebody else's happiness and participation and success. One person was not going to let somebody else fail because that would mean the failure of the whole project.
We were trying to find people that had fire, that had a spirit, that had a dream that they were trying to accomplish. Carl Sassenrath, the guy that did the exec for the machine, was his lifelong dream to do a multitasking operating system that would be a work of art, that would be a thing of beauty. Dale Luck, the guy that did the graphics, this was his undying dream since he was in college to do this incredible graphic stuff. And we were looking for people with that kind of passion, that kind of spirit, and more than anything else, the thing that we're looking for was someone that was for people who were trying to make a mark on the world, not just in the industry, but on the world in general. We're trying to get we're trying to look for people that really wanted to make a statement, that really wanted to do an incredibly great thing, not someone who was just looking for a job.
We worked in what we call the software cave, which was a room I'd say about 30 feet by 15 feet or 20 feet. I started about in August of '83. There was no hardware still. There was just some drawings on a whiteboard. Most of the hardware, in terms of the Blitter, the Agnes chip, the Porsche chip, and the Daphne chip had already been designed. Now those Daphne and Porsche you probably may not have heard of, but those were earlier versions of the Denise and Paula chip.
We had the board all laid out and everything, and all the architecture based on 512K RAM. Commodore came around and said, "Can't you make a 256K RAM? 512K RAM is so expensive today." I said, "Look, RAM is going to come down." But no. I said, "Well, it can't be done. I'm sorry." So I just went off. I went off. I come back a week later, find out, guess who told him how to do it? Guess who actually did it for him? Made 256K. You know that plug-in on the front? Here's the culprit right here. I've never forgiven him for that.
PC came out at 16. Okay, the original PCs were coming out at 16K. And I had a PC at home, and so I was praying, Jay, make it 64K at least. Please, 64K at least.
512K from the start in terms of socket capability. Okay? Now, you don't have to plug all those chips in if you want to make it cheaper. But at least you got the holes there that the guy can plug them into later. And the architecture with that as a basis for the software. You follow me? But no, the cost of those sockets were about 3 cents a piece. And that was too expensive for Commodore and other people.
I owned an IBM PC at home, and I programmed on the IBM PC. And when I crashed my IBM PC, the screen went dark, and it would reboot sometimes, or you'd have to turn it off, actually, and turn it back on. And about that same time, Macintosh, was coming out, and they had this little bomb. You know, I'd heard about their little bomb that came up on the screen. I thought, that's kind of interesting, coming up with some sort of indication that your software failed, that your machine failed. And I sat down and I thought about it, and I thought, you're going to have a sense of humor. If your machine fails like this, it's like, and you lost 2 hours worth of editing, you're going to want to laugh about this somehow. So we put it in there. The machine crashed then for Martin Shabilsky, I think, in his office. The machine crashed, and he saw this thing come up, said Guru Meditation. And he said, "What is this? Take this out right now." and so I took it out, and it said software failure. And all of a sudden, so a new version of the system went out that said software failure, and everyone was like depressed. Well, it was like, put the Guru Meditations back in. And so we did it without permission. We just put it back in.
That's right. All the developers, what did you do? It's a software failure. What is that? So we just put it back. We didn't ask. We just did it.
I can remember one of the first the large users group meetings I went to, where people would go up there and they'd show their programs, their software that they wrote in front of the group. And of course, whenever it would crash, the Guru Meditation would come up, and everyone would be chanting Guru, Guru, Guru. Now they wouldn't be chanting software failure.
We made a lot of design decisions that were wrong. If you say we're selling a personal computer.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we decided that we wanted the graphics to run fast. So it never checked. It would go out and it'd say, "Give me some memory," and it would never check to see if it got it. It just assumed it got it. And so if we didn't have 512 memory, we'd it'd crash and you get a Guru Meditation error. And on retrospect, those were mistakes. If we were building a personal computer, we'd be sure to not do that now.
Like the original color scheme of the Amiga, there are a lot of people that don't like the white with the blue background. We sat there with TVs to try and figure out what colors on NTSC wouldn't just bleed horribly as you made the transition from the foreground color to the background color. And it turns out those colors work great.
Well, I had 3 monitors on my desk so I could check everything. I had the Sony we used because it had crisp graphics. I had a TV so that we'd see how badly it blurred. And I had that IBM 2-color thing just so we could see how badly it looked in 2 colors.
Do you remember some of the cheesy TVs we had?
Yeah.
Joe Schlag TV Company. We went out and literally, we needed to test how the video would look on television, so we went out and we bought 10 televisions. And we went into the video store, I think it was the Good Guys or somebody, and we said, we want your worst TV. And the guy sort of looks at us and he says, well, okay, these guys don't really want the worst TV. And they say, we've got this great TV on sale. It's $279. We say, no, you don't understand. I don't want a good TV on sale. I want the worst TV set you got in the store. And he sort of looks at us and says, well, this one's $375, and it's terrible. Great, we'll take it. Yeah. Wait, I should tell a Rob story. Rob Peck was my roommate, and this was a guy. He had an excellent talent. Rob Peck's talent was he could go into an engineer, get 5 minutes of explanation, and write a technical manual that was good.
He took so much abuse from us during those so much abuse. Get out of my office right now. You know?
I remember when you were writing Graphicraft and Rob, and we were putting together the manual, but the program hasn't been written yet.
And then I had to turn around and make the program look exactly like those pictures.
A third-party vendor was doing this painting program they were going to call Graphicraft, and it was coming out pretty bad. And the only reasonable solution was to get someone who was going to be able to do it right. But you couldn't go find another company. You couldn't get, and there was all kinds of things got in the way with getting the job done. So Archie just did it. He went into his room, and he did it.
Well, it was after 3 weeks of writing Intuition. He closed the door opened once. I remember it. The door opened once. The door closed.
And all those chicken bones
and he
came out.
Yeah. And it came out, he came into my office and he said, how do message ports work? So he went into a conference room, I explained message ports, he went back to his room, he closed the door, and like a week and a half later he opened the door and Intuition was done. And then there was Graphicraft, and it was like the next week it was Graphicraft, closed the door, and then 3 weeks later he opened the door and Graphicraft was running and you could use it.
There we were, working furiously designing this machine. Software guys with absolutely no hardware whatsoever to develop on. The hardware guys working like maniacs trying to get the hardware to work, failing miserably. The software guys were filled with glee. Because we got to take vacations, you know. We're sitting out in the back, smoking cigarettes, enjoying ourselves, you know. And no, I'm just kidding. We, in the software group, actually, were not willing to wait around for the hardware to come together, so we spent a lot of time pretending that we had hardware. And the way that we did that most often was to create little pieces of software that emulated the way the hardware would work, emulated the way those 3 custom chips would work. And it was starting to get real important for all of this stuff to come together well, because this is now getting on to the end of 1983, and we were starting to run out of money. It was starting to get pretty tight with money, and it became really apparent to us that we had to make a major showing of the stuff that we had done so far at the January CES show.
2 weeks before CES, we're getting ready to bring it in. Dale has worked out this stuff for line draw. There's no line draw in the hardware. And the other guys and the software guys saying, come on, Dave, you can do it. Put line draw in the hardware. What are you, nuts? There's 2 weeks before. These things break every time we breathe. You can't turn lights on and off. Some wire falls off the pin. You want me to change the design, rewire it. All these guys are going to go put line. You're out of your minds. No way. Bob Pariseau comes in and says, yeah, Dave, we have to have it, and jokingly grabs my arm. Mitchie, this nice little dog, this dog that I have not even pretended to like, leaps to my defense. Here, Pariseau was grabbing my arm, twisting it. Come on, Dave, you can do line draw. Mitchie jumps up, attacks poor Pariseau. What could I do? I did line draw. I had no choice. Mitchie came and saved me from a fate worse than death. And yep, so we did it. We squeezed and we ran and we screamed. And hours before CES in the middle of the night, you and Dale were in there writing code and stuff. And they were sitting in Chicago working under the bench.
So the hardware first came together about 9-10 days before the show. And the hardware guy said, here you go. Okay. So here's what they delivered to us. Most of you probably know that inside the Amiga are 3 high-performance chips. And the first pass at designing the hardware for the chips was, of course, not to actually do the chips, but to create something in hardware that performed like the chips would perform one day. This is actually an illustration of the Agnes chip. This is the real one, by the way. This is the one that we first had, the first one that came together. And I think there's eight breadboards on there. And each one of those boards had about 250 chips. So, you know, times 8, lots of chips. Unfortunately, lots of things can go wrong with lots of chips. And there were 3 of these, one for each of the chips. There was also a 4th one that was the breadboard itself. The whole machine also, by the way, was called Lorraine. Lorraine was our code name for what we were working on. Lorraine was the name of the president's wife, too. And at first, she was honored to have the machine named after her. She came in during those 9 days between when we got the hardware and CES, and she heard the things we were saying about Lorraine. Then she wasn't quite so honored. All the while that we were working, we had hardware guys that were constantly on call. Here, for instance, is a picture of one of them. They were there the entire time that we were there. There was always some hardware guys there. The software guys came and went. Dale Luck and I, in particular, worked there almost the entire time. Those entire 9 days, we worked nonstop trying to get stuff done. A lot of my work depended on the things that Dale was doing, and so I was constantly badgering him. And he was, okay, I'm working real fast, I am. Here's a picture of Dale working real fast. What Dale was doing was he carried around his pillow with him the entire time that he was working there. And the computers that we're using at the time had a program on it that we wrote called Beep. You type in Beep, and it would beep. And it had a type ahead buffer, so you could type in an instruction and have the computer go ahead and do that instruction, which would take a while. And you'd also be able to type in beep long before it would actually be executed. So what we used to do, and Dale was an expert at this, he would carry his pillow with him at all times. He'd type in the compile instruction, type in beep, and go to sleep. 5 minutes later, beep, he said, oh yeah, oh, back to work, back to work. So, back to CES. This was our booth. They had on the right-hand side this little tiny part with, you know, games around the outside and joysticks and stuff. And over here on the left, they had this massive, huge area with no windows and no way to know what's going on inside of it. And one door with this enormous burly guy that said, yeah, what do you want? You know, anytime you wanted to come in, anytime we wanted to take anyone back there, we had to bribe the guy $50 to let us in. You know, okay, go ahead. And inside that back room is where we showed the Amiga. The entire day of the show, we would bring people in one after another, and it was a great experience. And if you'll pardon my grammar, during the entire CES show, the one most oft-repeated comment that we heard was, oh, shit. Because, of course, no one had ever seen a computer back in 1983, or January of '84, do the kinds of things that this machine did. Here's a picture in the middle of the demonstration at CES. This is Bob Pariseau, who was the original Amiga evangelist, and boy, he used to do a song and dance that you wouldn't believe. The guy was incredible. Sitting next to him is Glenn Keller, one of the great hardware whizzes of the project, and it may look like that he's assisting Bob Pariseau at the demo, and Bob Pariseau is rolling merrily along, but in truth, the hardware just died. And it froze on a picture, fortunately, so Bob was able to continue as if everything was okay, but Glenn is working furiously in this photograph trying to get the thing to work again.
At CES, we'd always have the same failure every time. The same set of chips would blow up, and I knew which chips were. Glenn pointed them out the first time, so these are the chips that always blow up, Dave, every time we had this little static problem. Jay thought we were brilliant. The system would go down. Yeah, we'll go look at it. Change the same chips every time, no matter what was wrong, and it would fix it. It was a trick, Jay. It was a trick. We knew what that is.
That's where the bouncing ball really started, was one late night at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. And but around 11 or 12 o'clock, I guess pretty much it was over. People were going to go back to their rooms, but RJ and I decided we had a few things we wanted to do back at the convention center where CES was. And so about 4 o'clock in the morning, after, I think we had about a 6-pack of warm beer left over too that we'd hidden in the, you know, those little stands that they put plants in. And I finally got it to where I thought it was reasonable, and I fell asleep. And about 8 o'clock in the morning, we got woke up by the guys coming back in to the booth, and they're like, their mouths were dropping, and they're going to go out and bring all the potential customers back in and say, look what this can do now. Later on, we finally did. We added some stuff that were desperately needed for the next CES show, and we added the horizontal so that it would bounce left to right besides just up and down. And one thing that it desperately needed was the sound. I envisioned something that was like boom, boom, like something really big and ominous and it was going to blow your socks off. And so we searched around to get just that right sound, and we finally, after a lot of experimentation, we got Bob Pariseau took one of these foam bats, and we had 2 of them that we used to work out disagreements, and was starting to hit different things. And then Sam would record the sound on his Apple II, and then he would massage the data so we could play it on the Amiga. And we finally came up with a perfect sound, which was Bob hitting an aluminum garage door, one of those garage doors that goes up and down, and Sam on the other side with his microphone digitizing the sound that was reverberating through the garage. And so that's how the bouncing ball, the bong sound was developed.
And it was a great show. It was a moment of great success. You know, everyone who saw it was awestruck by the thing. A lot of the software developers agreed to get behind it. Some hardware people said, you know, it's interesting. We want to know more so we can start to design hardware for it. And we were ecstatic. We were in heaven. We did really well at the CES, and everyone was still working together. We still had that great passion, that great sense of pulling together as a team to get everything done, but it started to feel in the air as if it was going to go bad, because there was just less and less money all the time. It was getting harder and harder. You know, we knew the kind of debts we had run up with our creditors and the fact that we weren't paying them.
They never missed a payroll.
Didn't that have a lot to do with the prayer meeting?
Had a bit to do with me mortgaging my house, too.
Yeah, Jay did a lot of interesting personal sacrifice. There was a stock thing that you did that you changed stuff on, and you dragged money in from the house. Yeah, it was. I was lucky enough to be sitting 5 feet away from Jay while he was doing, while we were doing stuff. Of course, the dog was there, but then after line draw, the dog was okay. But yeah, poor Jay on the phone. Well, okay, did I get a 0.25%? And it was, yeah, it was a tough time, Jay. Thanks.
No. Well, I wouldn't have normally done that for a company, except it was my company, and I knew the product was, I knew the product was solid concept, and we were so far ahead of everybody else at that time in terms of a really usable computer.
So then came Atari, and Atari said that they would make a deal to buy the company from us, and they they knew that we were real tight for cash, so they made a deal with us where they would advance us $500,000 to make our immediate payments. What we owed immediately. There was a payroll they do the next day that this whole thing came down, and then we would have 1 month to negotiate with them to come to a deal for them to buy the Amiga. And so Atari came in and they said, okay, we'll give you $1 a share for your Amiga stock. And we said, $1 a share? God, in our wildest dreams, we had thought $50 a share, $75 a share. We're going to be rich. It's going to be great. God. $1 a share was ridiculously low. So Dave Morse said, $1 a share is ridiculously low. And the Atari guy said, okay, how about 85 cents a share? So wait, at Harvard they told me you go up, I go down, and the truth was that Atari knew the condition that we were in, and Atari was not interested in buying us. Atari was interested, for reasons of its own, in buying just the machine. They didn't want to buy the group. They wanted to just get the technology. Now we're down to the last few days before the end of, the end of the agreement, where we either have to come up with the bread for Atari, or they would get the company. And then the phone rang, and it was Commodore calling. And Commodore said, well, we can make you a much better deal than that, So they send out their plane, and Dave Morse hops in the plane, and he flies out to Westchester, Pennsylvania, or New York, or wherever it was. And what follows then are 3.5 days of intense negotiations, where they're hammering out one detail after another. What's going to happen? Dave's interested in the people. Oh, this and that and the other thing. And they go back and forth, and they're trying to get everything worked out so that the deals are just right. And when you don't cut a deal like this in 3 days without working well into the night. And here it is, the last night, and these guys, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're like, what are we going to do? And they're dancing, to keep themselves awake. They keep going here. And it's the last minute, and there's the jets out in the parking lot with it, revved up against its brakes, and, everyone's around the table, and they say to Morris, they say, $4. $4 a share. That's our final offer. You're out of time. You can either accept it or, not, and go with Atari. And he says, I don't know. Let me check with my people. He goes, gives Jay a call. He says, $4. Jay says, well, it's not 50, but, it's $4 is okay. If you think it's right, go with it. And he calls up, the other guy's a VP of marketing, the VP of sales. What do you think? Well, it's not what we had in mind, but it's better than zero. I'll go with it. And everyone said, okay. So he went back to the table, and he sat down. He said, sorry, my people say $4 is not enough. I'm going to have to decline your offer. They said, well, how about for a quarter? He said, okay. I don't know about you guys, but I would not have the nerve to look down a barrel of a gun like that. So they write him out a check for $500,000. He hops in the jet. He flies back to Atari headquarters. He walks in the front door. The lawyers are big fat lawyers with their huge cigars. Morse, yeah, glad to see you. Come on in. We got some papers for you. He takes that check. He slams it down on the table. He says, see you, boys. I got a plane to catch. Yeah. God. Oh.
And all of a sudden there was Commodore, and there was money.
Yeah.
And then there was a big building and the blueprints. Remember the blueprints?
Yeah.
This is how we're going to do the offices. And how do you want to do software? How do you want to do hardware? That's building.
We went back to Commodore to negotiate the future of the machine and the closure of the deal. And Dave Morse told me, don't insist on an expansion port. I says, but Dave, we've got to have an expansion port. Who's going to buy a computer that you can't expand?
Right.
And I insisted, Dave said, well, we're liable to not close the deal, and you're liable to lose your job. And
all right.
That's the way it is.
We're glad you did.
Commodore gave in and said, okay, expansion port.
There'd be no Amiga today if it weren't for that.
I think so, too.
So the getting of the machine to slide from a game machine into a business machine happened relatively effortlessly, like I was saying, for two reasons. First of all, because the hardware guys were smart all along, and second of all, because the base of the operating system was designed such that it could do that. I mean, we had a multitasking library, device, interrupt-driven, preemptive, priority-based operating system in a game machine. So how did it happen? I mean, where did that come from? I mean, I know where it came from for me. I joined the company because it was a dream that I wanted to chase. Was that same, with everyone in general, or?
Yeah, I think so.
To say that it was just a family atmosphere doesn't really say it, but I think that there was, I was just, working late at night, working on a CES, and it wasn't, we've got to get this done or the company's going to fail. It was like, of course we've got to get this done. This is our collective effort. This was, I don't know how to describe it, but there was camaraderie, family. It doesn't really describe it. But there was people. It was kind of like all the cousins, all the brothers and sisters and cousins were in this office in this room together. We're all working because there weren't people beating us. There weren't stockholders. It was just we've got to get this thing done, and we've got to do what we have to do to make it happen.
There was the dream of the machine, and there was the dream of the company. And the dream of the company was, when we went to work there, we were offered stock of the company. We owned the company, and we knew that there weren't a lot of big investors. I mean, there was Jay, and there was Dave, and we knew them. They worked there. It wasn't like mystery people investing in this company. It was our company. I mean, we really felt, at heart, it was our company. Jay and Dave made us feel that way.
But you know, I've heard a lot of people say interesting things here. Howard's trying to find a word to describe it. You're talking about the group here and stuff like that. For the first few years after Amiga, you probably know I spoke a lot. I told the story of the early days of the Amiga a lot, and invariably by the time I'd get, you know, I'm running out of time, I got to kind of wrap things up here, I'd get to talking about what it really meant from my own perspective, what we were trying to do, what it really meant to us. And I would always end up feeling sappy, you know, like, because I mean, like, you know, how it's unreasonable to talk about a business as, you know, we weren't just friends, we were friends, and we weren't just doing a job or creating a machine, we were chasing a dream. The most important thing I learned of all of this was, you know, when I'm just this kid from the south side of Chicago, you know, and I got involved in this whole thing, but I'm still just this guy. And the truth of the matter is that anyone could do this. I proved that finally to myself, that I could go off and follow a dream and have it come true for me. And you could too.
When you were growing up, you learned you were facing a world full of competition. There were so many of you with all the right credentials. To succeed today, you need a way to stand out from the crowd, to make the most of your special kind of music. Introducing Amiga, the computer that gives you undreamed of creative power to work faster and more productively. With built-in color graphics no other comes close to. Amiga, the first personal computer to give you a creative edge.
And now the best new rock performer of the year is...
Stevie Palmer.
Thank you very much.
Oh my gosh, did he get over here? Isn't that your next door neighbor?
What a surprise. I'd like to thank my agent, my arranger, and Sheena, the girl next door.
The Amiga computer. Professional video production at amateur prices.
Stevie, you rodent.
Amiga from Commodore. The computer for the creative mind.
To create a 3D animation, you set a scene as if you were photographing it. With most 3D software, you stretch, combine, and mold basic geometric forms to model the objects in your scene. In an alternate method, you use spline curves instead of geometric forms for creating smooth shapes. Once you have your objects, you set up your camera and lights. The camera is the point of view from which you'll see the animation. You move the objects by creating paths for them, and you can test the animation by using a wireframe. Later, you can render the objects with all lights and surfaces.
Most innovative computer company, Commodore, introduces the future of computing now. The Commodore Amiga 500, the newest addition to the Commodore Amiga family. A computer that gives you the creative edge with a productivity base, business, words, music, art, design, animation, graphics, video. Only Amiga makes it all possible. The power of Amiga gives you a system that moves with you, bringing to you an efficiency and speed that you've never experienced in any other computer, and an ease of use that makes work or play as simple as point and click. Introducing the only computer you will ever need, the Commodore Amiga 500. The power of Commodore Amiga is threefold. The multitasking abilities at the heart of the Amiga, the 68,000 chip, the control software called Intuition, and the benefits and abilities that these two features give to software developers. The 68,000 chip and Intuition work hand in hand to expand the abilities of the Amiga far beyond what was considered possible in a personal computer. Intuition is what makes the operation of the Commodore Amiga as simple as point and click. You select the program you wish to access by using the mouse to move the pointer to the icon or symbol for the program. Click twice on the left button, and the window for the program opens. From there, the simplicity continues. Select the icon for the specific tool of the program you wish to use by moving the pointer to the icon and again clicking twice. Now that tool is open for use. Further control of the program is available through the menu. To access the menu, simply move the pointer to the upper control bar, hold the right button of your mouse down, and your menu appears. To select from that menu, continue to hold the right button down and drag the pointer with the mouse to the function you wish to select. Then release the right button. As you can see, the function is activated for use. This unique control system means that anyone can be up and running on an Amiga in minutes. Instead of trying to translate your needs into a confusing machine language, Intuition translates your thoughts and commands for the machine. A simple reversal of roles that translates into a major benefit for the system user. The power of Amiga and the abilities of Intuition don't stop there. Amiga's multitasking abilities allow you to call up several programs and exchange projects, tools, and more between programs. As well, complex software can run on the Amiga, such as real-time 3D animation. The multitasking abilities allow the Amiga to define the object, plot the object in space, calculate the movement of the object as required to follow the program path, and render the object in a series of images for real-time display simultaneously. Multitasking reaps incredible benefits for the user. You can print one document, take a second document and move information to it from a third document, then still have enough power to receive information over a modem all at the same time. The unique abilities of Intuition, when combined with the Amiga's power and speed, have created a tool truly unique in the marketplace. A system that moves immediately with the user to fill his needs. A minimum of distractions, a maximum of productivity and concentration at a speed you never thought possible. The Commodore Amiga does everything that any other desktop system does, but it does it better, faster, and more efficiently than any comparable system that exists today. The Commodore Amiga 500 is a personal production and creative tool with a level of performance that outstrips any of the competition and at a price that provides value. The Amiga 500 comes complete with an internal 3.5-inch floppy disk drive, in-system standard keyboard, the mouse, operating software, and 512K of RAM expandable internally to 1 megabyte, enough for just about any task you wish to tackle. The Amiga will output visuals in a variety of signals and will work with anything from a home television to a video monitor, including high-resolution RGB Commodore monitors. And the Amiga is ready for expansion, with ports for an extensive list of peripherals, 3.5-inch and 5.25-inch external floppy drives or hard drives, modems, MIDI control systems, and stereo audio output, plus joysticks, printers, laser printers, video digitizers, even peripherals that have not been developed. The Commodore Amiga 500 is the perfect creative and productivity tool for the home, schools, and the small business, or as a production station for its many graphic, music, and video production uses. The list of available software is constantly growing, Word processors, including a new Amiga-based version of WordPerfect, the world's largest selling MS-DOS-based word processing software, spreadsheets, database programs, all available, all made more powerful by the multi-window, multitasking abilities of the Amiga. You have the power to access multiple files from the same software, exchange information, print one document and work on another, and more. You can have several different programs operative at the same time, transfer information between programs, all completely interactive, giving you a flexible, fast tool to accomplish your tasks in record time, all through the use of the mouse. No confusing machine language commands, just point and click. While the Commodore Amiga is an outstanding system for standard business applications, its graphic and sound capabilities move it into a class all its own. The heart of the graphics system, a custom chip produced specifically for the Amiga, in combination with the multitasking strength of the main processor, give the Amiga the graphics and animation abilities of systems worth thousands more. CAD/CAM, video painting, image digitization, desktop publishing, animation, both three-dimensional and character. It all exists now, and it's all easily achievable with the Amiga. The Amiga's power will stretch creative abilities and offer a unique business tool for production of presentations, either on video or in print. Or the opportunity exists to use the Amiga itself as a presentation or display medium, lending any fact impact. A number cruncher, a filing system, a graphics system, a video image recorder and output device, a print shop, a complete production system, and it doesn't stop there. In addition to the custom graphics chip installed in the Amiga, there is a custom sound chip that gives the Amiga 4 channels of audio with a level of response that exceeds many stereo speakers. Existing software allows you to learn to play music or compose and score music, then hear it played back with the instrumentation and meter you have chosen. For the more advanced musician, the Commodore Amiga is a production tool of incredible value, recording the performance and the composition of a player, then controlling through a MIDI interface the sound generators of the musician's choice. When it's time to relax, only Amiga makes it possible to have so much fun. Fly a fighter, work out a mystery, play a quick 9 holes, shoot a few baskets. The enjoyment never stops, all with the wonderfully interactive animation and sound made possible by the Amiga's technical brilliance. In fact, Bally Games, the manufacturer of many of the top professional video arcade games, has chosen Amiga technology to spearhead their video games machines. Amiga sound and graphics will add another dimension to the new generation from Bally, with Bally releasing their hottest new games as Amiga software. The Commodore Amiga 500, the future of computing for the home, personal education, creative applications, and the business environment. A system that gives you the creative edge with a productivity base, a computer that does it all at a level far beyond any competitive system, at a price that no one has matched. All this from the acknowledged leader in new system technology, Commodore Business Machines.